Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Velo Podcast. This is our first one of 2025, and I think that makes it our official first Velo video podcast. We've done...
Say that 3 times fast, huh?
Let's try that again. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Velo Podcast. And this is our first official video podcast of 2025. I go so far as to say that this is our first official video podcast ever, even though we did do that test one that you guys can find on the Velo website. I think this one's going to go on the YouTube, and that makes it the first, very, very official real one. My name is Mike Levy. I'm a mountain biker who rides gravel bikes way too much. For some reason, I'm also the host of this thing. But thankfully, I have content manager Will Tracy and tech editor Alvin Holbrook to steer me in the right direction. Guys, we're back from holidays. Will, what did you get Alvin for Christmas? Do you guys do a gift exchange? Hey?
I'm ashamed to say we did not do a gift exchange. But
What?
Alvin, your choices would have been a pair of socks with bikes on them or some underwear with bikes on them.
Well, we've talked about it. We're going to do a little bit of a gift exchange. We've got some stuff that I've got some things that you might want, and you've got some things that I might want that we'll leave undisclosed. I also have some socks too, so we can
take that. I got some socks with mushrooms on them for Christmas, so if you...
Oh,
yeah, it's very exciting.
Very nice. Yeah.
You're not in the cycling industry if you guys aren't sending socks to each other, eh?
Yeah.
I did receive some cool swag from a few companies. That was cool. Brompton, the company that's not making any money, they posted a 90% profit loss or something like that this year.
They made a profit, but it was $12. So
yeah, or is 4 digits or something like that. Anyways, they sent a very nice tote bag. That is very cute, and I like it, and I'm eagerly awaiting a Brompton gravel bike whenever they can get those in stock for me to review.
I assume that's a folding Brompton gravel bike, correct?
Yes.
With small wheels?
Small wheels, big tires, baby.
How small are the wheels?
They're 16s, so it's the same size. I believe they're 16s. I should have looked this up ahead of time, but I believe they're 16s. But instead of it being a 1.5-inch wide tire, which I believe is a 35 mil wide, it's a 45.
And is that thing meant to be ridden like a gravel bike?
That's what they're saying. So we're going to find out.
Have they adjusted the geometry in any way, from a standard Brompton?
Yes. Yeah. So
cool.
Apparently it's a little bit longer. They won't say too much more than that. I don't think people traditionally focus too hard on Brompton's geometry. They also haven't changed the geometry much in, 50 years, something like that. So this could be pretty big. I will say that last year when I reviewed their P-Line Explorer, which is a new 12-speed bike, it's got 3 gears on the back and it's got an internally geared hub, or 4 gears on the back and a 3-speed internally geared hub. I tried to ride a Sentry on it and that was miserable. So we'll see if I want to do something like that again on this.
I assume they changed the gearing for those little wheels too, I would imagine.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. You do spin out at 32, 33K, so just over 21, 22 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But
all right,
everybody's fun.
Everybody's excited. They come to the Velo Podcast to hear about the folding Brompton bikes. I swear we're going to talk about exciting stuff today. Will, did you get any cycling-related paraphernalia for Christmas?
No, for the first time, I finally managed to not get stuff, which was honestly nice, because at this point, I have everything I kind of need for cycling, and it's just kind of people hear, oh, he likes bikes. Let me get him something with a bike on it, or that kind of thing. I finally had that not happen this year, so
good.
That was actually pretty awesome.
Yeah, nice.
I got a nice blanket that my sister got me, and I think that means I'm really an adult now because I got excited about home goods. So
that is boring.
I know.
Boring. Yeah. Alvin, did you use your cargo bike? Did you go off into the bush and cut down a Christmas tree and carry it back with your cargo bike?
It's this the area where I live is low-key idyllic in the sense that there is a Christmas tree farm within biking distance.
Yeah.
But
Perfect.
I did not, because we use a fake Christmas tree here, unfortunately.
Ooh.
But I've been talking with some friends about using the cargo bike to take Christmas trees that have been curbed and then go burn them in an undisclosed location, possibly Muir Beach. Yeah.
It's Christmas beach party kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
that
I saw
sounds-
families like just north of San Francisco on the beach doing it. And I was like, man, that looks rad. Can I do that too? And so see what happens.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. All right. Well, guys, today we're going to talk about our favorite rides of the past year. The end of the year kind of gets me thinking about all the dumb things that I did. And I don't know about you guys, but I often I'll sit there and I scroll back through my Strava and I look at the photos and kind of relive some of my favorite rides. So I thought we should probably talk about that stuff. If anything, it's going to serve as inspiration for the coming year for us to do some more rides that end up being our favorite rides. So the one thing that I told you guys, I said, come to this show with all the info about your one favorite ride of 2024. But I did say that it doesn't have to be the longest or the hardest. Maybe it could be maybe it's that dinner lap you did with your partner, it took an hour, but it meant something special. Or maybe it was your first ride back from injury. Maybe it was your first ride on the new bike. So we are eventually going to get to that. But first, we got to talk about some news because that's how we do things here now. We're going to talk about Van der Poel's ribs, Wout van Aert winning cyclocross races, a video game about bike lanes called Thanks, Doug. Alvin's going to tell us all about that. Alvin's also going to tell us about some shit talking about tires, which I'm super excited for. But first, Will is going to tell us about UAE's new supercomputer-powered coach. Will, what's happening?
Yeah, so UAE is developed a AI tool called Anna, which they're using as a way to basically analyze all the reams and reams of data they have on every single rider in the pursuit of finding maybe just that little extra edge over the competition. So it is not just plugging, Pogacar's data into ChatGPT. They're developing their own unique system in-house to find an advantage.
What would an AI coach do that a normal coach? I mean, even those guys, they're not using normal coaches. They're using the best coaches in the world already. So in my mind, my question is, what does a fake AI coach do that they can't?
Yeah, see, that's kind of the thing. They kind of feels like they don't quite know yet, and they are excited to find out what they can glean from a new bot. This doesn't sound like it is completely up and running yet. Like, they are developing it. They aren't quite putting these insights into play yet. But there are AI tools available to you and me already in training thing, like Trainer Road, a bunch of other different programs at this point all have AI coaches. But those ones essentially are taking, what we already know, what the conventional wisdom is on training, and they are kind of boiling it down to giving you little tips about, like, here's what you could do. You were sick this week. Here's how you can adapt your training program going forward. It really is just taking what we already know and like what a human coach would tell you, and then doing it for essentially a lot cheaper. But with the team, it's like, think of it like low-hanging fruit. Like, we already know all these things about training, and those insights are just kind of giving you all the low-hanging fruit, everything we already know. What the pro teams are looking for, because they're already full of, they have a bunch of coaches. Each of these riders themselves could probably be a better coach than a coach that you could get access to. They know everything already. They're searching for that kind of like hidden fruit at the top of the tree that no one else has access to, and they're just hoping to find that one little advantage over everyone else.
Nobody wants Poggy to be any faster.
They do not.
I do. Why not?
I guess, it makes for excellent racing in some ways. It's very interesting. But so Jim Cotton wrote this, and if you're listening, you could go to the website. You can read about this thing. I'm actually going to read what he wrote here. He said, UAE Emirates has been working on its AI supercomputer solution for some time. Will, are they using a supercomputer or are they just using like a nice Mac?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
It
it's all
sounds about as
relative.
vague and helpful as any other AI thing in the world does.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like every day in San Francisco, if you like drive down the freeway, you're inundated by ads that make no sense for like AI. Like I don't know what the hell they're selling me, but yeah, it's all relative. I mean, a supercomputer today or like 5 years ago, an off-the-shelf Mac could probably be basically a supercomputer, but I'm not sure what exactly how much computing power they have behind it and where they're getting that computing power from. But it is like a system just for themselves. It's a proprietary system that they're developing. And so from what I can tell, there are other teams, or from what I know from Jim's reporting, there are other teams who are using some AI analysis. Like I think it's Visma Lisa Bike has a tool to help riders choose their nutrition, but so far UAE is the only one who seems to be developing this like specific training tool. And even other well-funded teams like Red Bull are a little bit off the back. At least they're not saying out loud that they're developing one.
UAE Team Emirates might have more cheap energy than any other team.
Yes.
Or access to it. So maybe a supercomputer isn't too far off. I do want to say that, like, I think one thing where AI can be valuable, and I am an avowed AI hater, but where it could be valuable is by giving people like a potentially another perspective on something. Just because they have the coaches and they have a ton of like riders they need to take care of, but AI can give you like just one more perspective on what's going on there.
And they're quick to say that it's meant to augment the human coaching, not replace the human touch in coaching. Just because every rider is different. There's so many variables in this, but cycling just has so much data available. Probably, I think basically of any sport, it probably has the most, save for triathlon, because they have two more sports on top of riding a bike. But there's just so much data to go through that there's probably big potential for something that we've missed. There's big potential, and it's also interesting. It's not just for training; it's also for race tactics. Apparently, that UAE is developing this for. So they kind of are able to put how a race played out, like a single stage of, like, say, the Tour de France played out, into a computer, put Pogacar's data in there, all the riders' data in there that they have, and then kind of just let that play out the stage again, and then see it in a new light, just analyze how that played out, what they did at what moment, and how they responded to like other riders. So I think that is actually a really interesting way for AI to influence racing.
That definitely sounds interesting. I know there's always talk of them not letting them use team radios, which I think would be super cool. And this like AI race strategy thing, I just picture them like before the race starts, not UAE specifically, but whatever team, like before the race starts, they're sitting in their giant bus, they fire up the quantum supercomputer, and it says, okay, Pogi needs to attack with 103 kilometers left to make this happen. And then he just attacks with 103 kilometers left. Like, what I don't want to see, and I imagine this would be a long way away, what I don't want to see is the computer telling everybody what to do. It's like fueling strategies, in race car races, they just plug the thing in and they know the fastest. I want it to happen organically. I don't think it's ever going to not be organic, but it would be a bummer to see that, I think.
Yeah, it would be like, I think the dystopian future you were describing is them having a computer in the car in real time giving analysis, and then just like in the rider's ear telling them, hey, you should attack now. But I think if it's used in conjunction to be like, hey, we are just watching race footage, and this is just a new way to analyze race footage or how a race played out, I think that that could lead to more interesting racing, especially if more teams get access to that. Yeah, just an arms race that eventually one person has it, then every team will eventually get it. But
future, it's right now, unfortunately. Alvin.
Of course, all these things could end up being like useless right now, and it's just more of a psychological element. Like, we have the upper hand, we have all this data. I remember during the Lance years, they developed like $1 million project bike that was supposed to be, I think it was a time trial bike. It was supposed to be faster than everything everyone else had. And they didn't tell anybody, but they just ended up using his regular bike because he preferred it. So But they
Head
still have the
games, I
psychological
like it.
advantage that we put all this money into it, all this development.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of head games, Alvin, Dylan Johnson, YouTuber and gravel cycling racer, he was on the Bonk Brothers podcast recently, and he was talking about a tire article that you wrote back in August, I think, for Steamboat Gravel, which is pretty smooth. I've never been there, but it looks pretty smooth. And I guess you wanted to run 25s, and he was disagreeing with you.
Yeah, I wanted to
What's going
run
on?
a track bike and tubulars, and and all of that. I should mention, so Dylan Johnson, like he is a member of the Bonk Brothers podcast. A lot of people like it. Dylan Johnson does a great service, I think, for performance.
He's also a
oriented
freaking badass on a bicycle, and there's
Yes.
so much knowledge with the tires and the aero testing and all he's done. We're definitely not talking shit. Maybe a little bit.
A ton of admiration for what he does, and all of that. Basically, so I will say two takeaways from this before I explain what happened. So two takeaways. I need to explain my testing procedures better, and perhaps explain why I'm doing what I'm doing a little bit better. And number two, I need to go back to the drawing board, I think, and have something I can point at and say, look at this. Like, we actually tested these tire widths, and this is why X width is faster. We need to be able to have that. So anyways, with that being said, SBT Gravel, if you pay attention to it, and if you look at the pros this year, they were all on, Keegan Swenson won, and he was on a Maxxis, an Aspen ST in the back and an Aspen tire up front. Those are 2.2 inch wide tires on his like Santa Cruz Stigmata. He was maxing out the tire width right there. And that's because the pro course this year was far more rugged than the normal courses of years past, and it's far more rugged than any other SBT gravel course. The course that I was doing was not the pro course because I am like just a normie in that regard. And it is glass smooth, basically. Like, it is the definition of champagne gravel, and like there is a decent amount of road too. So what I did in narrowing down that list of tires was, yes, I settled on 40 mil widths. But that was because I had a 3T Extrema that could fit a mountain bike tire. I tested the tires that are on there, a 40 and a 45 mil width, for the specific situation I wanted to optimize for, which was smooth dirt. And the 40 was faster marginally than the 45, definitely faster than the Conti tire that was on there, but it was much faster on tarmac. And so that's why I went with that one. And I think that's what most people most of the time should be on for that course. So that's about it. I'm going back to the drawing board. We're going to figure this out, and we're going to see if we have information that corroborates everything.
It sounds like you got a bit of fire under your ass to do some tire testing.
I lit the fire myself, I think. And you got to do that sometimes. But I mean, I run a 45 mil tire myself. I'm maxing out the tire that I need to, but I'm also optimizing for the terrain that I want to optimize for. So
yeah, fair enough.
And sometimes that means, I stand by this, sometimes that means that you shouldn't use a mountain bike tire. Fancy that.
Yeah. Alvin, I assume that at some point you're going to do some tire testing.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So I am narrowing down exactly which tires I want to use, but we're going to use a popular mountain bike tire. We're going to compare it to standard gravel tire widths. We're going to use a control bike, which in this case is going to be a Santa Cruz Stigmata that I've got in as well, because it fits all those big tires. We'll do some testing.
Are you going to be, I don't mean to pressure you into doing anything, but are you going to be doing any, like on different surfaces? Will you do like a roll down test on gravel and a roll down test on pavement, or different types of gravel?
So that is a good question. I still need to figure that out, and I still need to talk with people to make sure that our testing protocol is sound, like scientifically. I do a decent amount of testing as it is, but like I don't trust the data enough to say like here's this in the world and this is conclusively better. It's more so like, hey, I did like 5 kilometers on these different tire widths, and like I tried to keep my power the same, and I did it all on the same day. Here are the results, but
Yeah.
I don't feel confident enough usually with those numbers.
No.
So
No, tires are a funny thing. Like, like I look down, if I'm running a little skinny tire, I look down and I feel like I'm going really fast. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
But then I'll get home and I'm not going really fast. I was just looking at a skinny tire and the ride was so shitty that it felt like I was going faster, I think. That's all that happened.
Absolutely. It was interesting in my like trying out different widths on that 3T Extrema that the mountain bike tire, which admittedly it was a Conti Race King, but it's not the good version of the Race King that Dylan Johnson loves and has made perpetually out of stock. But it was faster than I expected it to be, but it wasn't fast enough for me to choose it for SBT. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Dylan actually got me on the Race Kings. I watched one of his videos and I was like, God damn it, I got to order a set of really expensive Race Kings. And then one of them the rear tire lasted not long and I destroyed it. And dude, there are no Race Kings in Canada, so I'm on a rear Rambler right now and it's fine.
I also really like the Schwalbe Thunderbird, and that is a popular option as well. So that's we'll see what happens, what tires I end up choosing, and I just got to narrow down that testing protocol. So
interesting. All right, that'll be an exciting day for you.
Yeah, and I should mention if you are listening to this and you have opinions about this, as long as you can be civil and not attack the character of me or something like that, tell me what you want. And let me know, and we'll make it work. So,
Will, let's talk about some racing now. Van der Poel, he was winning the things, and then he got pulled. What happened?
Van der Poel got pulled. Yeah, I mean he's looking this season to get his 7th cyclocross world championship title, which would tie the record of Eric de Vlaeminck. And yeah, there's a slight hiccup here. He's done 5 races so far. He's won 5 races so far. So he's racing really well, as per usual.
Pretty good.
Yeah, as the reigning world cyclocross champion should be. But yeah, he went down in that 5th race. He basically crashed, hit one of the poles that was marking the course, went into his ribs. He still finished that race, and I guess he was feeling.
Did he win?
He won. Yeah. He was,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. He finished the race. It's just like, you're good. You got the just the blood flowing. You're good. You get back up, and then after the race, after everything settles down, you realize, oh, this kind of hurts, and then he essentially just kept realizing, oh, this still hurts. So the last 2 races or so, he has decided to pull out just because it hurts too much for him to ride at the moment. So he is. It's mostly over hard stuff too, so you can still like ride a bike, but it's just when you're on a bumpy cyclocross course that is painful. So yeah, he's pulling out for now. But cyclocross world championships aren't for 3 weeks or so. It's at the end of the month, actually early February. So that is, of course, his big goal of the cyclocross season, and he wants to repeat there. So yeah, I mean, meanwhile, Wout van Aert is back. He had a pretty, for him, disappointing 2024 road season. Had a massive crash during the Spring Classics, I think at Torsdorf, London. And he broke some ribs. I think his sternum, his collarbone was pretty bad. Wasn't really ready in time for the Tour de France. Got back in fitness for the Vuelta, was winning a few stages, and then had another crash that didn't seem awful, but it turns out he hit his knee into like some rocks on the side of the road, and that was it. So that was his season. So finally now from that second injury, he's come back. And
did you see that photo of his knee?
Yeah,
like
it's
the
brutal.
scars.
It's gnarly.
Man.
Yeah.
Have either of you guys ever broken a rib or cracked a rib or even just damaged like some of that connecting stuff around there?
I've managed to. I need some wood to knock on, but I've managed to never break a bone in cycling.
Are you kidding me?
I'm serious. Yeah, I even like in my road career, I managed to avoid any like serious crashing.
Dude.
Yeah, I'm really good at rolling though, so I know I'm hitting the deck. Like I don't just like hit my collarbone straight into the pavement.
Yeah.
I like tuck and roll.
The key is to put out the fire. You got to tuck and roll with the crash, not just do the drill bit into the ground.
Oh
and
God,
stop.
I have a great GoPro video from my friend. This was my fault that I crashed. We were going right, and I was on the inside. I didn't realize we were turning, so I kind of just like went into my buddy's back wheel and then kind of went over the bars. But it was at like 18, 20 miles an hour, and I was completely fine. Like my kit wasn't even hurt. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But,
yeah,
I'm just inviting pain upon myself now. I know.
Oh yeah, you got to knock on the wood.
Yeah.
Coming from the mountain bike background, where like, you might crash every ride for a week, depending on where you're riding. But the crashes are relatively low consequence compared to the gravel stuff. I've only really hit the deck once or twice on my gravel bike. I tell you, dude, it was like I got hit by a bus. Mountain biking, you just like, you bounce around usually, whatever. But like, it's a whole different ballgame when you're like mostly naked riding a drop bar bike and you hit the deck. It's not good. Alvin, have you ever done any rib damage?
You're talking to the wrong people. I haven't broken a bone either.
My lord,
I have like hit the deck really hard racing, and
yeah, I mean, I've gotten road rash too. Like I've definitely crashed,
which is terrible.
Yeah,
and I've bruised stuff to the point where like I've like bruised like ribs, and so like it's just hard to breathe.
Yeah,
like that's a big one. Like I've definitely done that, but no broken bones. So
okay, well let's
find
try
people
to keep
more
it that way.
adventurous than us.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed. So one last question about Wout for you, Will. Would his time off? We have to actually ask the AI supercomputer, Chat GTP, coach this. Would this time off for Van der Poel, would this be a benefit for his world champs, or would it harm his world champs chances?
I kind of think. I mean, I think it kind of doesn't really matter for him. He's just so good. Like him and Van Aert are just really good to the point that they can just kind of show up, even mid cyclocross season and just immediately dominate. And Van der Poel, of course, has been gone for the last couple races, but Wout van Aert has just stepped in and won those races instead. So they are just that good. So I don't really think it matters that much. They'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm really worried for Mathieu over here.
Yeah.
Very concerned.
I need him to have another world championship. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Let's go from world-class pros back to the real world, which is where a man named Doug Ford, he's the premier of a place called Ontario, guys. Ontario is a province.
Sorry. I had to
Mike, for those of us south of your border, what is the premier? Is it a governor?
I actually had to look it up. It's sort of It's sort of like a prime minister, but he's only the prime minister of that specific province.
Okay, so it's like a governor of a state in the United States.
Yeah, sort of. He probably has less power. I don't actually know how Canadian politics work. It probably mostly doesn't work, but he basically runs Ontario. And since he's the boss of the province, he's the boss of Ontario, I think he wants to close down some important bike lanes in Toronto, which is like a big ass city. So somebody made a video game called Thanks Doug that Alvin, I want you to tell us about.
Yeah. As you said, Doug Ford wants to rip out bike lanes out of Toronto, and it's frustrating as someone who like is pro bike lanes. It costs a lot of money to put them in, and it's going to cost money to take them out, and it makes roads less safe for everybody involved. Like the numbers are there. Anyways, so the game is called Loser Lane, and if you've ever played like Temple Run for the OGs, or like Subway Surfers or I don't know, Frogger, I suppose.
Yeah, I was going to say
trying
Frogger.
to get
it's
3 different
generations
there.
Yeah.
It's you're avoiding something, so it's different than Temple Run and Subway Surfers to a degree. But you're just hopping across lanes trying to avoid traffic, and then if you hit something, you're done, like a car door, and then it flashes big letters, "Thanks, Doug," at the end. So it's very fun. I have played it, and it is we'll link it down below or something like that. But it's pretty fun to play, and it is a good representation of like what it's like if you are someone who's not in a car on a road.
Alvin, how long did you survive?
Like 15 seconds usually. I'm only good at like car racing games in my experience, and NBA 2K. So I do not like do well like this, which is just like real life. I'm not very good at avoiding cars either.
But
You know,
I lasted 38 seconds for the record.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to try this to see how long I last. One thing that I've always thought that people should have to do is ride a bike on a bike lane just to, like, people that don't ride bikes, they have no freaking clue how scary it is out there. Like, ride in a bike lane just so they have an idea of what it's like to have like a bus or a large truck come within like this far from you and like just over and over and over and again. And I know we're out there, we're kind of, you know, you have to be okay if you're riding in traffic, like they're roads for cars, you know, they're not roads for bikes as much as I mean, some of them are roads for bikes. We do belong there, but they're really roads for cars, you know?
Yes. Yeah, precisely. I think so this is kind of like my city planning and civil engineering background coming out, but like we don't do a good enough job of designing like public places for people who aren't in the middle. So like I'm thinking of like older folks that might be biking because that's the most convenient way to get around, or they want to do, I don't know, just get around by bike. And like we are all confident cyclists, and it can be scary out there for us. Imagine someone who is less able or isn't as confident on the bike. And if you are driving, if you are someone like Doug Ford that's just like looking at the bike lanes and you're like, oh, you are just causing traffic, like I understand that, and it's hard to be like, oh, well, the data says that it's safer for the cyclists. It's just like, think about someone else. I don't know. Think about someone that's not yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing is like, I think about it as if I'm nervous to ride. Like we have the Sea to Sky Highway here, which runs from West Vancouver to Whistler. And it's like one of the more beautiful roads in the world. And I do ride on it sometimes. It has a shoulder, it has a bit of a bike lane. But like, dudes, like before I leave for a ride on the Sea to Sky Highway, like I'm always like, okay, like Sarah, I love you. Like I'll say my goodbyes, let's hug a little bit longer. And if I'm nervous to be on there, I can only imagine how like someone who's not as maybe overly confident to ride their bike feels in that sort of situation, like scared to death. Did you guys ever see that video? I think it was out of China. They were making the bus drivers like sit on a bike and stationary, and someone drove a bus like within like this far, this close to them, to give them an idea of what it's like to be out there and be scared shitless. I'll have to find that video. Makes a lot of sense.
Please. I have seen that, but I would like to see it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Not quite to our best rides of 2024 yet. I want to know a little bit about what you guys are testing right now, Alvin. I know you've got a few things.
Yeah, I think the big one is that drew your guys' attention is an inflatable helmet.
Yeah.
From a company called Von Tet.
Speaking of commuting and bike lanes.
Yeah. So the idea is that it is once inflated, it's a full-size helmet, and I don't have it here because I had to send it back. There are only a couple here in North America, and we were able to get one.
You got one for a test, but you had to send it back? The helmet back?
Yes. Yeah, that's the normally you don't do that because there's a lifespan to these things, but it's not certified for sale quite yet in the US, and there's like limited supplies available. But I will say it's ISO certified and ISO tested, and it was EN certified, so to like UK standards. And so for me that's enough. And if there's something I'm missing there and I happen to crash, then I've got health insurance or something. So
tell me how this thing works.
Yeah. So basically what it is, when it shows up, it's in a sleeve that's about the thickness of a modern current MacBook Pro. And then you have a mini Fumpa electronic pump. You plug it in. It's got a Presta valve to it. And then there is a little dial. There's a
Where's the valve?
It's on the back left side of your head, basically.
It's not just like
it's not on
middle,
top,
sticking right up.
Or
in the front.
No,
does it
it's
stick
not
out
an
anywhere.
No, it doesn't. It's pretty compact, and it's so compact that I wanted to see what pressure that it would like pressurize the helmet to, and I couldn't get any of my like gauges on it because it's so tight between the valve and the helmet, and it's so compact.
Do you essentially have to use their included pump with that?
No, you don't. I just couldn't use any of the other like half dozen pumps I have around here, or or pressure gauges.
But you theoretically could, but it feels like it's hard to find a pump that would actually grab that valve.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think you could do that reasonably, and you just need to use something with a Presta valve that can clear the space between the two. So you basically inflate it. They claim 30 seconds. I was getting about 45 seconds. There is an indicator on the side that as it pressurizes, there's a little black line on this yellow pill that slides. And basically that black line needs to line up with the gauge. And once it does that, it's inflated and you're good to go.
What PSI?
I couldn't figure it out because I couldn't get the pressure gauge on there, unfortunately.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and I only had it for 3 weeks. So
Well, Alvin,
plenty of time, but not enough time.
Who is that helmet for? So it's supposed to be like something that can just fit compactly into your bag, or like if you're a commuter, or where does it fit in?
Yeah, you're writing my review for me. So
excellent.
I did travel to a press launch at Giants US headquarters in Southern California with that helmet. I used it as my primary helmet. I didn't have a bike with me, but I tend to carry just one bag when I travel, and this allowed me to do that pretty easily. So if you're traveling regularly and you need a helmet and you're not carrying a bike, that's a good situation.
Does it look like a helmet when you put it on? Like, or is it clear? What does this thing look like?
So they're saying that's going to come in different colors. The one that I got was in black. It looks like so far I've only ever seen photos and images of it in black. And it's interesting because so you've got these like nodes that look kind of like bananas. So if you think of like a helmet, like the last of the like leather helmets before they introduce EPS foam into it, it looks kind of like that, but just like oversized, basically. So you've got these like black bananas on the top of your head, and then there are these like little fins on top of each of those black bananas on top of your head. And the fins are there basically because they are where they're able to like basically seam weld each section of the helmet together. So I'll have all kinds of photos and video in the review that should be up later this week. But I had multiple people tell me it looked like I was racing in an anime or something like that.
Neat. Take it as a compliment.
Yeah.
Does your hair come through?
You know, it did not actually, which it happens to most helmets that I ride, where like I have like a little bit of hair sticking out because my hair tends to have a mind of its own. But that didn't happen, and it ventilates better than I thought, but not enough to have hair sticking out.
Fair enough. That sounds interesting. I never thought I would be looking forward to reading a review of an inflatable bike helmet, but hey, here we are.
Yeah, I would say don't expect it in the Pro Peloton anytime soon. Don't expect it by me anytime soon. And it's also $350 US, but it includes that pump, which is like an $80 value. So,
and it's for commuters. It's a $350 helmet for commuter type people, or people that might not want to deal with having to store a helmet somewhere. Basically, that's the gist.
I'm not even sure if it is for that, unfortunately, because I wasn't going to talk about this, but I went to like a Bay Area bike share thing here with the helmet. Usually I would carry a helmet with me, but I brought this one with me plus the mini pump. And you're sitting there for like 30 seconds beside the bike docks getting this darn thing to inflate, and it's loud and it's super conspicuous. And and like if you're only going like a few blocks or something like that, like why can't I just carry the $60 Smith helmet I normally commute in with me?
Okay. All right. Well, let's balance this out because I also know you have a new steel road frame, and I just want a couple sentences about it. Tell me what you got.
Yeah, Stinner, Santa Barbara, California. They normally do steel custom road bikes, and they are branching out and doing pre-made bikes. And not only that, but they're making them really affordable. So this frame that I have here, it's called the Carrizo Select, and it's like $1,700, comes with a frame and a full carbon fork. The Carrizos, they're all road frame, so 40 mil wide tire clearance. And we're going to build it up.
And it's made in the U.S. for that price.
Made in the U.S. Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
That'll be good. Okay.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm working on, eventually at some point, people will be able to read a review of a Cane Creek invert suspension fork. I'm going to write a little comparo of that versus the Fox 32 Stepcast, which I have a zillion miles on, and a RockShox gravel fork that I've also put far too many miles on. So
for that. Yeah,
little comparo, they could not be more different for different uses for sure. They each have their own place. Yeah, for sure. They're like the Cane Creek is not for the same kind of riding as the Fox 32 in a way. Like the 32 has a much wider performance range, but the invert still offers some pretty neat advantages, and it's obviously way lighter and it looks way cooler too. So yeah.
Have you spent much time on like the Cannondale Lefty Oliver or anything like that?
I have ridden many lefties over the years.
That you have.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
All on a mountain bike. I've ridden like the old. I used to have a carbon lefty, the dual crown carbon lefty that we put a Mojo cartridge out of a RockShox Boxer fork in. We put it inside the lefty. I had these adapters machine. So this is way back, but it had amazing damping, and I'm a big fan of the chassis. The chassis is so incredibly stiff in my mind that outweighs some of the like annoying axle things that you might have to deal with if you've got to take your wheel off. I really like them, but I'm a sucker for anything that's different. Have you guys spent much time on lefties?
Yes. I would love to do some sort of performance testing to figure out which one is faster in a straight line. Because you'd think that one leg of a fork is more aerodynamically efficient than two legs, right?
Dude, as a mountain biker, my brain breaks in half when I hear that people don't want to run suspension because of aerodynamics. I just I don't understand. I get like maybe you don't want the extra weight or the movement, but like the aero thing to me is, we're going to have to talk about, we'll do a whole gravel suspension podcast because I think I need to learn. You guys need to teach me about this because that's just not a factor in my mind. But I guess, 8 hours at 30, 40 kilometers an hour, it adds up, eh?
Yeah, I suppose so. But not a ton of pros are using suspension either.
Which is crazy to me. Crazy.
Interesting. Yeah, again, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of it in the coming year.
So anyways, guys, last week I said, come to this show ready to tell me about your favorite rides of 2024. So my first question, Will, for you, when I said that, did a ride immediately jump out in your mind, or did you have to sit down and think about it for a while?
I would say a couple rides jumped out at me. Okay. Would you like me to tell you both of those or go with it?
Yeah, I want to hear.
Yeah, there's the first one was the Paris-Roubaix Sportive, the Paris-Roubaix Challenge, I think it was called, which is I was at Paris-Roubaix to report on the races, and figure while I'm there, may as well actually ride the cobblestones. So
yeah.
I had the opportunity to go out and do 8 of the sectors. I had only had time to do the shortest version of it. But yeah, I got to ride the actual course before the women's race on Saturday. So that was.
So speaking of suspension, did you wish you had suspension?
I sort of did. I was on a Specialized Roubaix, which has the Future Shock stem, which is essentially a suspension system. I also had 35 millimeter slicks, just at I can't remember what pressure I used, but like lower than like the tire definitely says you should do. So I was on max comfort mode for that race.
Yeah. So was that your first time?
First time on the cobbles. Yeah, I'd done Belgian cobbles before, but they are an extremely different animal. They feel like a perfectly paved road compared to the northern France cobbles.
Yeah. So like someone like yourself, you've grown up racing road bikes, watching road bike racing. I imagine that must have felt pretty damn special to be there riding on those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that's special about cycling is that you get to go ride the roads that you watch all this racing happen, and you can just go do the same roads as like your heroes when you're a kid are doing. You like if you're a basketball fan or football fan, it's very rare. Like any sport, it's very rare you can actually get on the field, the court, the pitch, whatever, do the same thing in the same stadium as the pros do. But like here was an opportunity to actually go ride the same roads, go experience riding around the Roubaix Velodrome, the iconic finish of the race. Actually be on that race, or all these years growing up just watching the winner come around that do that 1.5 laps of the race of the velodrome. It's just like it's so cool to be doing it yourself.
Were the cobbles worse than you expected?
Yeah. So
okay, tell me
Tell
me about how shitty they were in a good way.
Yeah, so going into it, I knew they were going to be awful because everyone tells you they're going to be awful. And in the back of my mind, I was like, yeah, I know these are going to be terrible. But I was also saying, like, how bad could it be? Everyone's kind of making out to be worse than it is. And then you get there, and luckily, like, the day before I did that, I got to go out on Carrefour de l'Arbre, which is, like, the 4th to last sector. It's one of, like, the penultimate, like, really pinch point of the race. It's a 5-star sector. They rate all the sectors from 1 to 5 stars, 5 being the hardest, which basically means it's gnarliest, it's the longest, it's just the worst. Immediately, like I roll onto this ancient road, and I'm just getting my teeth kicked in. Like it is so rough. It had been raining for the week before, so there's still like puddles around that you're kind of trying to avoid because it's very lumpy. The road, it's not just like a perfectly engineered road with like a crown to allow it to drain. So at this point now there are lumps in the road, there are puddles. There's a lot of mud over the stones. They haven't been completely like cleaned or cleared. So yeah, you're trying to like ride a line, but the cobblestones are so large, they're so irregular, they're so irregularly placed, that like it's just you're hitting like these massive bumps all the time, and you need to be going like a certain speed to really get into a flow there, but the speed is so high. I remember at one point, like I don't know how I remember how long this sector is. It's probably only a couple kilometers. It feels like forever. I was like halfway through it, and I was feeling so slow, so gassed. And then I look down at my computer, and I'm doing like over 400 watts, and I'm just feeling like slow and like getting my ass kicked. So
yeah,
it's
crazy how like those bumps, like the frequency of the bumps can take your speed away. But it's kind of like whoops. Like if you watch a supercross race. If you could kick, I'm talking like I know what I'm talking about here, everybody. I obviously don't. But I guess my point is if you're going fast enough, it looks like you could kind of stay on top of the shit. But if you drop down, it's just like a battle zone, eh?
Yeah, and it's a spiraling feedback loop, like where you go slower, so then you're hitting more bumps, you're getting knocked off your line, you're taking worse lines, you're going around a turn with like the road is like cambered or like, so that water can drain off of it. It has a crown. If you're going around a corner, you kind of start like getting off of that because it's like a little bit slick. So you're trying to like not do anything like too rash, like not make any too sudden of movements, but you kind of have to sometimes to avoid like a pothole. Like it's just feeling like you're going to crash at all times for the entirety of it. it was like, oh, I was actually scared the whole time, because also it's like if I go down on that, it's not like that's gonna hurt. That's gonna possibly break a bone.
I have a question for you, Will.
Yeah.
So just talking tech, because that's what's on my mind. Like, I think about like those inflatable hub systems like Grava caps, which I don't know if folks aren't familiar with it. Basically allows the rider to adjust their tire pressure on the go as they're riding, or raise and lower it, I believe, and that type of thing. And we have a lot of videos on that. How helpful do you think that would have been for you in maintaining control over those cobbles?
I mean, if I was actually racing the race and wanted to, air up my tires a little bit more for the tarmac portions between the cobbles, like it's like a 160-mile race. There are only 30 miles of those are actually cobbles. So, but
like
they're awful.
Over 50 kilometers. What the fuck?
Yeah. It is. Yeah. It is a lot. But yeah, it's because I was already so on such low tire pressure. I was on the maximum like comfort bike they could have, and probably still call it a road bike. It was 35 millimeter slicks, like super low pressure. I think somewhere in like the 20 psi, 30 psi. Like I was going real low. Had the newest Specialized Roubaix with the Future Shock stem. I had all the suspension I could need, and it's still it still hurt, still scared me. So yeah, if I was actually racing the race, and it would be nice to add more pressure for the tarmac, but I don't know how much it would help me on the cobbles.
Well, just imagine being like in the middle of a group of like 50 dudes, and you're just barreling in there. The cobbles are coming, and you're just barreling in, and you're right in the middle, and you're just racing. I imagine your perspective, like now you've experienced that. When you watch the race, your perspective is probably...
Oh yeah, I mean, watching the race, I was just like more in awe of it. Both watching the women and the men, both back to back. And yeah, I got to kind of experience that because I was in the sportive. So you're with a lot of cyclists who are like lining up with just, their old road bike from the garage with like 23 millimeter slicks, and they are just having like an awful time out there. And I'm like with all these riders who I know, I'm like, I'm unsure of how good you are at riding, or like how much control you're going to have. And those people are just all around you, and I'm just like trying to get out in front of those people at every sector, just so I'm not caught behind like a big group. But
just the bodies, you don't get taken down by the bodies strewn across the road.
Yeah, because you're at the whim of people in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine you spent a lot of time riding on the sides.
Yeah, you try to. There's certain sectors they don't want the riders doing that, so they put out little barriers to prevent you. So like every 5 or 10 feet, what have you, there's a little barrier to keep you out of there. But if you're really good, like Vanderpool type person, will kind of just keep ducking in and out of those sometimes. So
yeah.
But I mean, I came all that way to ride the cobbles, so I rode the cobbles because there's only like 8 sectors of the race that I did.
Do you feel like you need to ride the cobbles again, or have you checked that box?
No, I would gladly go like do more riding in Flanders. Like the cobbles there are totally fine. Like I've ridden those cobbles on a touring bike, completely fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, that would have been a very cool experience. I know you got another ride you're going to tell us about, but we're going to go to Alvin because I want to hear about his special ride of 24.
Yeah. I mean, I had a few, and I've talked about a lot of them. Like I talked about me quitting that ultra gravel event and feeling really good. And that was for a long time my favorite ride of the year.
Alvin, isn't that funny? So that's exactly what I meant when I say, what is your best ride? The first thing that comes to my mind is like, oh, completing something gnarly that I wanted to do, check it off the list or blah, 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 blah. But then I thought about it for a few minutes, and it's exactly what you said. Like, it doesn't have to be that. Even though you didn't complete the ride, for other reasons, that ride was the best.
Yeah. Yeah, I learned a lot about myself. And a lot of the time I'm riding a bike to escape learning about myself. And the universe said, not today. You're learning a little bit. So
funny how that works.
Yeah, who'd have thought? I think my favorite ride that I did this year, though, and man, what privilege do we have? But I rode up El Sifon in Colombia, like the longest paved climb in the U.S. in the world, is what I was told. Like some people dispute that, but yeah, like our ride in total from the hotel that we were at was like 90 kilometers, and we went so that's like 50 miles, and then we went from about 1,500 feet elevation to just over 14,000. I'll let y'all figure that out in meters, but yeah, and that was a ton of fun, and I figured I could do it, and I did it, and it was easier and harder than I thought it was going to be. I did it on a custom Scarab. Scarab's a Colombian frame manufacturer. They make mostly steel bikes, and occasionally they'll put a carbon seat tube in there here and there. But they made a bike for me to ride up, and with custom geometry, the paint that I wanted, I got to put on the drivetrain that I wanted, and that type of thing. So a lot of fun.
Tell me about the climb. How do you approach a climb like that? Are you, I mean, slowly, I assume.
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. The recommendation from most folks is just because it's so long, and in some places it can be so remote, that if you can, you should have like an escort or someone tailing you in like a car or a motorcycle. We were fortunate enough to have like a couple different people on motor scooters behind us. So as far as preparation was concerned, like I'm living at near sea level, so you can't really get used to that type of elevation over a few days of riding, but I tried my best to. And then
Dude, I feel like 5,000 feet, I could start to feel it. So I assume you did feel it.
yeah, I mean, I did feel it, but I felt it, or I saw it in my heart rate. Like I couldn't get my heart rate above like 12,000 feet. I couldn't get my heart rate over like 130, for example. Like, so that's a big one. And so ideally you have some endurance base there. So I think that's a big way to prepare for it. If you have like some sort of good aerobic base there. But the way, I mean, I just made sure I was eating, and I kept on pedaling, and I mean, like, it wasn't like a competition for me. I stopped whenever I saw people, and I kept going, and I rode, like I sped up so I could catch other people, and then I would slow down to hang out with other people, and so on and so forth. But it started off raining as just because it was, even though it wasn't supposed to be rainy season in Colombia, it started off raining, then it dried out, but it was still like 90% humidity. And then it started raining again. So right at about 11,000 feet elevation, it started raining. So
what's the temperature like?
At the top, it was like freezing. Yeah. So it was there. And then at the bottom, even though we left at like 6 a.m., it was like 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So like 21 centigrade. Yeah. So you're basically experiencing every season as you're riding along, just as the elevation increases. So.
And you get to the top. Is there like a cafe there for you to like have a coffee and cry in, or?
This cafe is trying its darndest for being so remote. And so there is, I forgot the name of the drink that I had, but it was just like basically a cane sugar, like a hot cane sugar type tea thing. That was delicious and hit the spot. And I had it multiple times in my time in Colombia. And then there was like a square of cheese beside it. So you get a little bit of sodium there too.
That's perfect.
I was cold. I was really cold. And so you go in there and like you try your best to change your clothes. And I was just like soaked for one. So if you've ever tried to take off wet cycling clothes, it's a challenge, especially if it's form fitting. And I just did that, and I sat in like a towel for a little bit, and I decided that I didn't want to shut down right then and there because my body really wanted to. And then you just shiver for a bit until you get into the car where it's warmer.
Just want to paint a picture for everybody that's listening. So for those of you that know what Alvin looks like, just picture him naked except for a towel, sitting in the corner on the floor of a little Colombian cafe, eating a giant block of cheese and drinking coffee, just shivering, just
That's not too far off. Not too far off. There was a door when I was shivering in the corner, fortunately, so no one was subject to
yeah.
toweled Alvin.
Did you ride back down? I assume not.
No. We it was about as Scarab put on about as nice an event as you could have, I think, because they had the vans for us, because there was about a dozen of us that were there. And so we rode down the hill. If it wasn't so cold, I would have liked to ride down the hill. I think that would have been a lot of fun. Just because the bike that they had set up for me, the geometry that I wanted was like an experiment on downhill descending geometry. And I think it's pretty successful for me, at least.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Did you keep that bike? Do you bring it home?
I did bring it home. I have to decide now if I want to hold on to it. And it's got a lot of sentimental value. But I need space, and I only have so much space for my own bikes, and I want to race this season. And as much as I really like that bike, it's not the ideal race bike or crit bike. So.
Yeah. I imagine when you say downhill specific or focused geo, I imagine a longer reach and a shorter stem and maybe a little slacker, those kinds of things.
That's right. So I wanted a bike that I wanted the low bottom bracket. So it's got like an 82 mil bottom bracket drop. Most gravel bikes don't even have like an 80 mil bottom bracket drop. Most road bike geometry, if you're looking at like a specialized tarmac, is in the low to mid 70 mil range. So 80 is a little bit lower. And like I did like lightly strike a pedal once when I was really leaning into a corner and pedaling through it. Longer, so about 15 to 20 mil longer reach than what I would normally do, and then a shorter stem, narrower bar to accommodate, but the trail figures were still pretty low. So this one has a 55 mil trail figure. So you've got to commit to your turn in. You got to weight up the wheel and you got to lean in, but the low bottom bracket and the longer front center like means that you can kind of like keep it there and adjust mid corner pretty easily.
Yeah, that low bottom bracket probably also provides that sort of, I know it's a cliche thing to say, but that like in the bike feeling instead of like on top of the bike feeling.
Yeah,
I imagine it helps
that's right.
a lot with that.
I mean, it was interesting because it's not far off from Pink Bikes and your own mountain bike experiments, because I also steepened the seat tube angle to accommodate that, because I knew I would be climbing on it for long periods. So,
man, Will, here's Alvin here with his story of his favorite ride. He's just flitting off to Colombia to do the longest climb in the world on a custom bike made in Colombia that he brings home. I think his best ride ever beats us.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, Levy, what's your best ride of 2024?
Best ride was, so I've done a lot of night riding on mountain bikes many, many years ago, like literally like 20 years ago. But since I was working for PB, Pink Bike, our schedule is so flexible. It's like, why the frick would I ride at night when I don't have to? You know, I ride during the day and work at night. So I haven't ridden at night for like decades, probably. And this year, or 2024, I wanted to try some bike pack racing. And I figured I should start doing some dry runs. And I'd never ridden through the night. So for me, I set up a sort of a test lap. It ended up being about 400 kilometers, like 250 miles. And it's from Squamish to Chilliwack and back. And I purposely timed it so I left like in the middle of the day so that I would get off the Sea to Sky Highway before it got dark, obviously, because I don't want to get run over. But then the big thing is being able to ride through the night and then like the sunset. Dudes, I mean, in almost, 30 something years of riding bikes, I've had some amazing rides, of course, but like, and I've ridden at night, but riding through the sunset when you've been riding for like 8 hours, the sun goes down, you put your clothes on, you change and stuff, and you ride through the night. And I've got goosebumps right now just thinking about it. It was much more of a special thing to experience that sundown and sun up than I would have ever expected, to be honest. It sounds corny, but it felt like a silly rebirth, you know? Yeah. It was very cool.
That rebirth feeling, I mean, I can corroborate that. Like, I've definitely felt that myself. And I've had people tell me that, like, oh, it feels like when the sun is coming up because you're so tired from riding through the night. Like, you're tired, but then it's almost like you get this second wind, but it's more than a second wind.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
right?
it was emotional at the time. You know, I stopped and had breakfast at a Tim Hortons. I had a big old tea and a bagel and a cheese and a donut. And I'm just sitting there and I'm looking out the window and like it's getting a little bit brighter and like go outside and I put my gear on and like, dudes, I probably think about that specific part of that ride, let alone the ride, probably like multiple times every day since then, which I think is like the definition of like when it sticks with you like that, that's like the definition of a special ride. And also like, I wouldn't say I'm scared of the dark, but like, there's things out there and, you know,
Yes.
and I'm a little scared of the dark, especially when I'm by myself.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and it was a mostly urban route. Like part of the challenge was to route a plan that like took me on as much gravel and dirt as I could. So it was through a lot of urban stuff, but through a ton of like parkland and a bunch of fire roads and things like that too. And like, you know, I'm not comfortable riding at night by myself in the forest. That's what I'll say. It's fine, like, you know, around town, whatever. But like, you know, stuff happens. Like there's aliens and stuff out there. Watch out, you know?
Yeah.
So for me to get a set of lights, I got outbound lighting. I got the thing on the bike and the thing on the helmet, and I had spares and like, yeah, it was a very, very cool experience. And the ride itself went pretty well, mostly well. I felt great. And that's the other thing that I think made the ride so special at the time it might still be the longest ride I've ever done. Like I came home and it worked out that I came home and it was like the middle of the day by the time I got home. And like I got home and I felt fine. And for me, like I'm just a normal dude. Like I'm not great at riding bikes. You know, I try really hard, but just a normal guy. And to get home from a ride like that and to realize that like, as long as you're doing the things you're supposed to do, feeling blah, 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 it really does just come down to like mindset and keep pedaling. It's really like, it can be that simple, you know, if you're doing the other things and to realize that you or me, like a normal dude could do something like that and feel good afterwards. Awesome. Yeah.
If I might ask, what was the motivation for this? Why were you doing that?
I wanted to do the BC Epic 1000 or some other bike packing races.
Yeah.
And I'm not responsible, but I am a bit of a planner. Like I don't want to go into it not knowing. I don't want to go to 1,000-kilometer race not knowing if I could ride 300 or 400 or 500 kilometers. So I wanted to, I guess the whole point was to gain confidence. More than a test run or more than a dry run of like bike setup, you know, because that's a big part of it too. I set the bike up for the 1,000-kilometer race, not this 400-kilometer ride I was doing, because I wanted to feel all that. And I really enjoyed all the setup. So that's where my motivation came from. Yeah. And just like I said, like realizing that I could actually do that thing and like the route planning. I loved every part of it. The route planning, the packing, the bags, like all the shit, like, and doing it by myself. And even better, I think on the way home, there's a bit of a sad part to this, but on the way home, like I said, I live on the Sea to Sky. So I finished with like an hour and a half of Sea to Sky Highway, which is kind of super sketchy. If anybody's ridden it, it's not like super nice. It's like you're literally on the side of like this twisty, sketchy highway with a small bike lane. And the highway was closed. Somebody had gotten to a very bad accident on their motorbike. So the highway was closed. But for me, getting to ride on the Sitaska Highway while it's completely closed, no traffic. It was like it couldn't have worked out better. Unfortunately, that guy got really hurt or worse. But for me, the ride itself was amazing. Yeah.
There's
Anyways.
nothing like a terrible situation to make your dangerous road otherwise really fun to ride, right?
I know the irony of that one. It was like, dude, I was buzzing for like weeks. I'm buzzing right now from that ride. Even though it took me 3 days to poo after that because I ate too many carbs. What was it doing? What? It was that's a whole. Yeah, no, that was I learned some things about my body as well during that ride, and obvious things in hindsight. Obvious things like if you're going to do a 2,000-foot climb, you shouldn't have all your warmest clothes on because you're just going to get soaked. This is obvious. I knew that before I do it. But when you're 12 hours deep and you're on the side of a road and it's pitch black and it's gravel and there's like some hillbillies over there looking at you and you're like getting changed in your Lycra, like your brain doesn't work the same. So I learned things that I thought I knew, but definitely didn't know. It was amazing. Yeah.
That does sound amazing. Do you think Velo would pay for us to do it again together?
Yeah, I think that what we should do, what I actually want to do eventually with us is for us to do, maybe me to come to you guys because you guys have such nice weather, and we do some big ass rides, but we podcast during the rides. So we ride for like 100K, we podcast for a little bit, we talk about how it's going. Maybe we go somewhere cool. I think that would be pretty cool.
I like that.
I'm super down if the higher ups want to pay for it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual retreat and also company bonding.
Guys, we're making content. We'll make some content.
Yeah. We're content. Someone called me a content creator the other day, and so that's what we're doing now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Will, you had 2 rides you came here with, so let's hear the other one.
The second ride, it's a little bit more brief. It was Stetina's Pay Dirt, so it's Pete Stetina's ride he does in Carson City, Nevada. So just on the other side of the Sierras from Lake Tahoe. It's a cool ride. It's set up in like a grinduro type format, so there's a few timed segments. And in between, it's just like, chill, relax, hang out with friends, kind of ride. So I was there to test the Shimano the Shimano GRX Di2 12-speed group. So that was the reason I was there. But got to do a really fun ride there. Really beautiful view of the Sierras from the leeward side, from the Nevada side, which I don't really get that often. I'm usually over in the California side. And it was in May. It was like pretty good weather. It was before it gets too hot. It was definitely still toasty by midday, but it was just I enjoyed that format. I hadn't really done that style with time segments and then just like chill in between. You actually get to enjoy the aid stations fully. Had a lot of pickle juice, had a lot of hot dogs, had a great time.
Nice. I like that grinduro format, like those time stages. I've never done it, but it looks like it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a good time. And then you get your competitive juices flowing, and then you can like chill and hang out with the same people you're like trying to put in the hurt locker.
Yeah, exactly. I will say that I do miss going to some of those press camps and riding with some of the guys. Like it's a neat atmosphere, especially when you're all somewhere new, like you were in those mountains, somewhere different. You guys probably hadn't been there before. It's a different setting. You guys try to beat up on each other because that's what we do. But you're also hanging out and having fun. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, well, guys, I feel like that's a reasonable place to end. I feel like I am ready to go start route planning. The weather is absolutely shit outside, so I'm not actually going to do anything anytime soon. But I'm kind of jazzed up to plan some stuff for 2025, some big dumb rides. Before we go, Alvin, what are you working on?
Yeah, so we've wrapping up on that helmet review that we were talking about. I've got to build that stinner that's back there. We just are working on reviews. I've got to nail down some tires too and figure out tire testing. So those are the big things. I suspect the tire testing stuff won't come out for another few weeks, because changing tires, and unless you get the same wheel set, changing tires on the side of the road to test them is a pain in the butt. So,
Dude, you need a Velo unpaid intern to do that shit for you. Or why some company should send you like a bunch of wheel sets, like aluminum wheel sets, and you can just put all the tires on, and then you just have to change the wheels.
I only have limited space in my garage, and
Okay, that's fair.
the otherwise unpaid Velo intern, my wife, is usually down, but I can't ask her that. So
Bit down that road.
yeah.
What about you, Will? What are you working on?
I'm heading to Australia next week for the Tour Down Under. So
Shit.
yeah, very exciting news. A lot of prep for that this week because I just got back from my holiday stupor and realized I actually have to work now, and it's a big event coming up. So doing a lot of planning for that right now. So
How long are you going down there for?
I'll be there for 2 weeks. So I leave Monday evening, and I land, of course, Wednesday afternoon. So you know how it goes.
Time change. Yeah, who knows?
So I'm gonna
Are
go
you
time
taking
travel.
a bike with you?
I am not going to take a bike with me. That's one thing I'm figuring out is I'm sure someone there has a bike I can borrow. Giant is putting on a little event. There's the Rattle Gravel, which is put on by the same people behind SBT. So there's a few events around there. I'm going to figure that out. I do actually have a bike bag now, so I guess I could bring one. But
Hey,
yeah.
I think we know a guy who has a folding gravel bike of some sort that you could probably... I heard it has tiny wheels, though. It might be weird.
Yeah, it might suck to ride over a long gravel race like that, like Radler gravel. Oh,
Well, when you're there, you're doing tech coverage, obviously some race updates, but we can expect to see some new bikes and stuff from you and that kind of stuff, I assume.
I'm very excited. It's the first time we get all the World Tour teams are together for the new season. Get to see all the new gear and hopefully snoop out some new interesting bits for everybody.
Very cool. Okay. All right, everybody, stay tuned for that. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening to us ramble about good times on bikes. And if you did like it, share this episode for us or give us a good rating. Brian actually said, I don't know if you guys know about this, but Brian said if I don't get an average of 4 out of 5 stars, he's going to make me do an Aero Bar group test. And absolutely nobody wants that, especially me. So share it, give us a good rating, and leave a comment on our social or on the YouTube channels. Next week, we're going to be back. I think we're going to balance things out a little bit by talking about some of our, I want to say worst rides, but maybe most difficult would be a better way to put it, because I want it to be like a positive thing where we figured out, we came through the hard stuff and we emerged through the other side as better people. So some of our most challenging rides of 2024 is the tentative topic for next week. So we'll see you there, everybody. Thanks.
See everybody.
later.